Welcome back to Bedtime with Mama. Tonight we're going to read Chapter 6 of the Double Trouble Society. Chapter 6 is called Children Never Forget. A mist had swept over Crowwood Peak during the night and was still lurking in the early morning light. The air felt cold and crisp and stung a little as Maggie and Ivy took heavy breaths on their scurry to school. Neither of them had slept more than a wink, and when they had, their dreams had been clouded by smoke and the sound of angry crows. They both spent restless hours reading. Maggie picked up The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and Ivy read a book about the history of Crowwood Peak. But it didn't tell her anything more than the legend in the library had. Even Maggie's morning song wasn't as upbeat as usual. Good morning, Ivy Eerie. My eyes feel blurred and bleary. The days outside look dreary. Got no sleep, so I am weary. Maggie yawned through the whole thing, and she didn't sing it as much as she groaned it. Ivy made them toast to share on their way to school. Max had once again tried pancakes, but once again they had been inedible. Fortunately, though, as he was running late, he muttered something about going over to Amy later to apologize before racing off himself. Maggie hoped her father might forget about it anyway, since he seemed to be behaving so oddly. So they headed to school quickly, holding hands as they went. A loud racket made them jump, and Ivy gazed up to the sky. "Look," she said. "What a murder of crows!" "What?" Maggie looked confused. "It's what you call a group of crows," Ivy said with authority. "It's a name given for them, isn't it? It's a great name for them, isn't it?" The crows cawed again, and Maggie and Ivy quickened their step. The smell of sugar was wafting through the air around them. "What's ruffled their feathers?" Maggie said, wiping jam from her lips. "I don't know, but Dad had to sweep bird feathers off the front path this morning. Something's got them spooked, that's for sure." The girls didn't say much else to each other the rest of the way. Ivy, because her mind was racing through her plan for the morning and what it meant if she was right. Maggie, because she was too busy eating and yawning. She was certainly not a morning lark. When they reached the school gates, Mr. Woodman, the caretaker, had only just arrived himself and was unlocking the giant padlock and the chain that bound the black wrought iron gates together. He had a box by his feet which was filled with garland of autumn leaves with little black cutouts of a witch on a broom nestled between the foliage. "Good morning, Double Trouble." The caretaker was a kind man with a big bushy beard and glasses that made his eyes look twice their size. He was brilliant at telling old stories if you had a moment to listen. He'd also share his sandwich if you'd forgotten to pack your lunch, which Maggie often did. Well, Maggie forgot to pack it, or Max forgot to make it. They were both as bad as each other. Sometimes, if you asked nicely, he'd be in goal if you were one person short with playing football. He wasn't very good in goal, but he was very funny when the team scored. He did funny dances and made sure to high-five everyone, whether you were on his team or not. Everyone loved Mr. Woodman. "Morning, Mr. Woodman," Ivy said politely. "Aurora." Maggie stifled a yawn. "You're here early today, eager to learn, or are you just hatching a plan I ought to know about? Or are you here to help me decorate for the festival tomorrow? You know how keen Miss Haggard is to get ahead of the game." Mr. Woodman pulled a long and warty witch's nose made out of rubber from the box. It was attached to a piece of elastic that he put over his head on his nose until he became a gruesome storybook witch. He cackled in a high pitch, and the girls normally would have laughed if only they weren't so worried about a real witch might come to feast upon their hearts at any moment. "Oh, we're hatching a Maggie began to say without thinking until Ivy spoke loudly over her. "Mr. Woodman, you know where Hokum House is, don't you?" Hokum houses? Of course. Why, it's right. Mr. Woodman began, pointing in the direction that Ivy and Maggie had just come from, which of course was indeed the direction of Hokum House. However, the caretaker stopped mid-sentence, and Ivy and Maggie's eyes grew wide as they saw, for the briefest of moments, Mr. Woodman's irises glow purple. He shook his head as if coming out of a trance. Hokum House, he said, in a voice that sounded both like him and unlike him at the same time. No one knows where it is, Ivy. You know that. It's been lost for almost 3 centuries. Ivy had let herself grow hopeful for a moment, but sadly, it looked like she might be right after all. I know, Mr. Woodman. I don't know what I was thinking, she said, smiling weakly, as they stepped aside to let him open the school. You coming in? You're welcome to sit in my shed while you wait for school to start. I'll be busy opening up rooms in the school, but you can help yourself to my secret stash of biscuits if you like. He had a shed in the corner of the school playground that sort of doubled up as an office. Aw, Mr. Woodman, you're the best. Maggie began to walk through the gates, but Ivy stopped her. Thanks, Mr. Woodman, but we're waiting for someone. We are? Maggie whispered, and Ivy gave her a look that meant play along. I mean, we are. Mr. Woodman smiled in bemusement and shook his head. Okay, girls, he said, as he walked with a merry bounce down the path to school. Who are we waiting for? Maggie whispered. Everyone. We're waiting for everyone. And Ivy wasn't kidding. As each of their classmates arrived at the gates of Crowwood School, Maggie intercepted them. Isaac Hedge was the first. He didn't have a wide circle of friends, but Isaac didn't seem to notice and wouldn't be the sort to care even if he did. He was far too interested in ponds and frogs and nature. As Ivy ran up to him, he was inspecting the contents of a jar that seemed to have a small amount of green, frothy liquid inside. Hey, Isaac, quick question. Wait, what is that? It's bioluminescent algae. There was loads of it in the bay last night. My mom took me down there to collect some, but it looks really boring during the daytime. Bioluma what? Maggie asked, closely peering into the jar. It's a chemical reaction within a living organism. It's like nature's own brand of glow-in-the-dark paint, Ivy said matter-of-factly. But anyway, Isaac, we have something to ask you. You know where Hokum House is, right? Yeah, he muttered, gently swirling the liquid in the jar. It's only like the spookiest place in the village. It's on Crawley Lane, isn't it? Yes, Isaac, you're exactly right. Thank you. Have a truly excellent day at school, Ivy said, smiled politely. But the smile faded as soon as she turned back to Maggie. In fact, Maggie noticed that Ivy was starting to look a little peaky. Jemia! Hi, hey! I know you don't really talk much. Jemia was only the most popular girl in school, and Ivy would usually never dare speak to her because she was practically made of gemstones and sunbeams, and although Ivy wanted to be her friend, she was simply terrified of making a fool of herself in front of her. But I just wanted to ask, do you know where Hokum House is by any chance? Jemia flicked her shiny black hair, which was the color of magical orange summer sunsets, looked Ivy up and down with her hazel eyes and said, Don't you live next to it? What, are you lost? Jemia's 2 best friends, Jennifer and Jamie, did their secret handshake behind Jemia as they laughed in perfect harmony. Yes, I know. I only needed to know if you knew, Ivy said. Gosh, you're such a know-it-all, Ivy. Even if you think you know everything, that doesn't mean you have the right to quiz everyone else as they go into school. Yeah, you're such a know-it-all, echoed Jamie and Jennifer. Jemia flicked her hair into Ivy's face as she turned and strutted into school. Well, that was brutal, Maggie sighed. Why did you put yourself through that? Because it was worth it, Ivy turned round to her. But even though it seemed to Maggie that Ivy's plan had worked, her friend still didn't seem very pleased. Was it? What have we found out exactly? Maggie asked. Don't you see? Think about it. Who has forgotten where Hokum House is? Who has insisted that Amy has been around since we were both kids? So far, both our dads, Miss Moody, Mr. Woodman, replied Maggie, counting on her fingers. Exactly, but who still knows exactly where Hokum House is? Apparently everyone who goes to our school the penny dropped. Oh no, all the adults are forgetting, but the kids aren't. Why? What makes us different? I don't know, but whatever spell Amy has cast, it only works on grown-ups. We seem to be immune. Maybe she needs something stronger to work on us, Maggie wondered aloud. Hey, do you think that's why she really wanted us to eat those cupcakes? Do you think she put a spell on them that would definitely make us forget? Maggie felt suddenly grateful she had mixed up poison and fish paste. Amy's cakes might still have been enchanted. I don't know, but let's make sure we never eat or drink anything she gives us, just in case. Well, I've not seen my dad eat anything Amy's given him, and she's only been here a couple of days. I doubt she's had time to visit Miss Moody at the library, and we've not seen her anywhere near the school. So Mr. Woodman won't have met her either. How is she working her spell on all the adults if she's not feeding them any of the potion? Ivy paused for a moment. Maggie was completely right. Neither Max nor Bill had eaten anything that Amy had given them. She simply arrived one night, and suddenly the next morning the adults had gotten all muddled up. Maybe it's something in the air. Maybe something like... Ivy began. Maggie and Ivy both had the same thought at the same time. Smoke. The bell rang, and everyone walking into school quickened their step, their school bags bobbing up and down on their backs. Maggie took Ivy's hand and pulled her out of the stream of the student of her classmates filtering down the path towards their day of education. We have to get back to Hokum House. We need to stop her. Ivy nodded. I agree, but what can we do? We can't tell our dads because they won't believe us, and we're only kids. Maggie began to lead her friend away from school, looking over her shoulder to make sure no teachers caught them. I think I might have a plan, she said, and together they ran all the way back to Hokum House without pausing for breath. That was the end of chapter 6. Come back tomorrow and we will go on to chapter 7 and find out why Maggie and Ivy are so intent on going back to Hokum House. Sweet dreams.